Keisuke, nice to have you here. And interesting to speak with you because you, as a guitarist, you work a lot with different kinds of settings and also with electronic surroundings, and you also have ways that you expand your sound on the guitar to take it into sort of other sonic worlds. So you're interested in using the guitar in these different ways. How did that come about?
I think there were two bands actually why I started playing the guitar, and one band was the Beatles, but the other band was Rage Against the Machine.
All right.
With Tom Morello on the guitar, and I was very fascinated that he was able to do all these. I think also on all the albums it says that it's not post-production, all these sounds, but it's like a live thing that he's doing on his guitar and with his pedals and things without using any digital or computer stuff or synthesizers. So I got very interested in that, and I was checking out all of those things, and then and I think while doing those things I got very also sensitive of sounds and got very interested, and obviously, you know, I was listening to rock, that would be rock music, but then I went on and like also listened to more acoustic music as well, but then also a lot about electronic music, and then I got very interested in that.
So your guitarist in that sense is much more than a guitar in a conventional sense, because it may be so elaborate the way you work with it that it almost loses its character as a guitar and becomes something else.
Yeah, that makes, yeah, and I think this is one of the very interesting thing about the electric guitar, I think, because it's this like sort of, you know, there's the electric guitar of Wes Montgomery or Jim Hall, where it's very about the guitar itself, but then on the other hand, you know, you have Tom Morello or Johnny Greenwood, and who are going in a total different direction with it, and it's still both kind of an electric guitar, and that's what I really like.
So how do you choose? Because at the moment of performance, you have all these options, opportunities, and one thing is the sound, but also the nature, what you can do with the sound, or if it's a loop pedal and so forth, because it gives something different to the music, and it sort of it imposes itself on the music in different ways. So how do you make those choices? Because then you're almost becoming a conductor, composer, as much as a performer.
Yeah. I think one of those, where it comes from is basically what I've been doing basically in jazz music, of being an improviser and you know, in the common sense of jazz music, there is a lot of improvisation with, you know, dealing with notes, not so much with sound, and I think that is, you know, coming from Tom Morello and those things, I think that is one of the ways how I see it of, well, obviously I can improvise by how I want to play these notes, but then on the other hand, how can I improvise with these sounds? And that is pretty much the choice of loops, or the choice of sound it's pretty much improvised.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes there are sections, or, you know, if I write a song, and then sometimes I obviously have a certain sound that I have in my head, but just the same way that it's fun to improvise notes, the same way I love to improvise with sound.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really separating those two things, but...
Yeah. So there is a kind of a grey area in between the two, where you can look at it as just as much as sound as chords/notes.
Yeah.
So how do you make that transition? Because a chord, notes, they have a certain meaning,
right,
and tend perhaps to be a bit more specific than sound, which is like a backdrop maybe, or a backdrop that can be in the front, of course. But,
right.
So how do you perceive the nature of chords and that transition?
Well, I have when I was graduating the school in Switzerland, I had to write a thesis, and my topic was Japanese ancient music and how it's related to today's music. And what I thought is very interesting is in the Western world, in the classical world, if you talk about music, if you take, for instance, a classical flute, it's really about the pure tone. Like everyone is, the musicians are practicing hours and hours so that you get the pure note out of this instrument. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing, for instance, with shakuhachi, which is a Japanese flute, it's a lot about the balance between the tone, the note, and the sound. But it's one thing. It's not a separation of these elements.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the Japanese word oto, it depends on the context how you can translate that actually. It could be a pitch, but it could be also a sound. It could be noise. It could be everything. So that is that. So I like this idea and so that's why chord is or notes are as much specific as a sound, I think. And there are different parameters. Obviously, at least in my school or in my past, I haven't had any lessons where it was like the specific amount of reverb plus the specific amount of delay equals this and this. I didn't have that, but I think while doing it, I mean I've been doing it now for a while, and I think you get a sense of it, the same way of sense of playing the right notes or playing playing the right chords in the moment. You kind of hear it, and then hopefully, and then you're gonna play these notes or these chords, and then also you kind of hear the sound you want to do it with, so that's why you automatically do that.
Yeah. So there is it's actually quite interesting that in the approach that we have today of combining or expanding on an instrument and its natural sound into something which is more noise-based or more ambiguous is actually something that in Japanese musical culture goes way back, because I could well imagine that we're speaking about a couple of thousand years of tradition. And
yeah.
So is it something that you, when you chose to study that, were you aware of this situation before, or was it something that you discovered while studying this?
I think both. I was aware that, I kind of knew, I have heard of shakuhachi music, and I was aware that there is a lot of things going on. I mean, if you would wanted to write it down, it's not that complex music.
Yeah.
Also rhythmically, it's nothing complex. But there is something in there, I thought, and I couldn't really explain what it is. And then during my time of looking at those traditional Japanese music, I figured that there is much more, noise is a very big part. It's, for instance, another interesting thing that I discovered is there's an ancient music called gagaku. Mm-hmm. That's a chord music basically, and that was always played outside. And one of the reasons why they were doing that is because when the wind goes through the trees, or if you hear the birds singing, that becomes part of the music, and that is how they looked at it. It's not like noise that is annoying or is not part of the music, but it becomes one thing, and that was very great actually. And that is, for instance, I discovered it while.
And then on top of that, it's something of the moment, so it's something that fits the improvisatory concept of using it at the moment.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, but I think one of the guys, I guess, is John Cage, right? Who kind of went into this direction, and he learned a lot of traditional Japanese music, I think. Yeah.
So how does that relate to a contemporary jazz idiom, which is, I guess, the one that you move in the most?
Right.
How does this ancient Japanese perspective of noise integrate into a modern jazz idiom?
I mean, if I knew the answer, then I don't know, but it feels for me, it feels right for me to include all these aspects of sounds and electronical devices into it, and you know, jazz always has the urge of finding new ways of expression, and I think that is part of it. It's funny, I actually yesterday watched a YouTube clip from Jim Hall, and it's funny because he is using some very crazy pedals actually on it, and he was saying it was an interview like this too actually, and then the guy, the interviewer, asked him what he thinks about effect pedals, and then he was like, yeah, you know, I for years I thought it's just gimmick and it's nothing important, but now he was discovering those things, that it's so interesting and that kind of it expands also the musical expression. I guess, yeah, including it in jazz, sound becomes more and more, I mean, not that, you know, sound didn't matter, of course it mattered, but now it kind of gets a different flavor or a different texture that I'm dealing with, and I'm very happy to, you know, also think a lot about how can this section sound like, how can I improvise with my sound, and I think it becomes more of a very natural thing.
Yeah. So how do you see in your particular case that this will develop? What is sort of the thing that interests you right now, and where you sort of feel an interest in a certain direction to go?
Just musically?
Yes, I mean,
general?
you personally, I mean, in terms of maybe even of equipment, or there's certain things that catch your attention right now that you want to explore?
Well, I recently went to a guitar shop and there was this beautiful guitar, so I kind of want to have that beautiful guitar. And I have, you know, couple of projects that I've been couple of them I'm working on for years now, and I just have the urge to, you know, continuing working with these bands, and you know, and while doing it, you know, getting together with all my friends and colleagues and working on music, spontaneously there's the urge of like, oh, I want to have this, or this might expand the vocabulary of the band or of the music. So, well, right now, but the actual thing that I want to have is not actually an effect pedal, but an effect pedal back right now, and because, you know, transportation is a big deal here in New York, unfortunately.
Yeah. But you prefer to use pedals? You never thought of making the step into using some software that you can run the stuff from there, maybe give you less to carry and maybe more flexibility, or maybe even doing something yourself? But,
that's true. I actually did that once. I mean, that was maybe almost 10 years ago, so, you know, things change, obviously. Back then, well, my priority right now is that I want to play guitar, and I want to be flexible, and I want to be able to change parameters in the instance. And having that, and then back then I was doing, like, I found a way to combine a computer. Actually, I was using Ableton Live, and I had some patches and stuff, and I was trying to do that, but it didn't really feel well, because, you know, there's latency, or back then at least there was a certain latency. It wasn't much, but still you felt it, and that really didn't really feel good at all. And I was doing like certain loops, like time-based loops and stuff, that was very practical, of MIDI clocks and stuff, and like syncing with other computers. That was great, actually. But then, I wasn't really flexible then anymore, and I had to like stick, might have been also the band, I don't know, but, you know, I really had to stick to the arrangement, and I wasn't flexible at all, so it didn't really feel good.
So you prefer the hardware because it's faster and, well, it's an extension to the hardware that you're working, which is your guitar. So
yeah, and what I really like is with all these, and I have a lot of old pedals recently, and a lot of them are half broken, so you never know exactly what happens, and I kind of like that.
Okay, so you invite chance like that.
Yeah.
Something will happen and we don't know what.
Exactly. Sometimes it's a great influence that you can, inspiration that you could get, but just pressing it and see how it goes, and then you and then you might have a weird sound, but then you have to find a way that it makes sense in the music.
Yeah.
That is sometimes a challenge, and a great challenge, and it's very interesting. Sometimes it's just gimmick, obviously. Then I can just switch it off.
Right, Keisuke, pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
Take care.
Thank you very much.